Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm watching the numbers go up, but we have a jam-packed agenda for our webinar today, so I am going to go ahead and get started. So thank you for joining Parachute and our presenters to discuss speed management today. We're very excited to host Dr. Linda Rothman, who will be speaking about the impact of automated speed enforcement, Paul Mackey, who will be speaking about road design, and Dr. Peter Burns from Transport Canada, who will be speaking about intelligent speed assistance. I'm Val Smith. I'm the Director of Programs at Parachute Canada. And for those of you who don't know, Parachute is Canada's national charity dedicated to injury prevention, and my portfolio is road safety. While we meet today on a virtual platform, we encourage you all to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we each call home. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this land home. To get started, I'm going to provide a short overview of our topic, and then I'm going to ask the presenters to introduce themselves, and they'll be sharing slides of their own. And then hopefully we're going to have time for a Q&A. I'm going to ask the speakers to try to keep it at around 10 to 12 minutes and allow some time for some questions. Okay, so next slide, please. So in 2023, we know that there was 1,964 people killed on our roads. 9,261 were seriously, catastrophically injured on our roads. We know that speed is a contributing factor in a quarter of those fatal crashes in Canada. Reducing vehicle speed is effective in saving lives on our road. There's multifaceted approaches and interventions that we also know work, and that's what we want to talk about today. Next slide, please. So very quickly, I'm going to just have a look at this visual. So I pulled it out so I could sum it up very quickly. This is the safe system pyramid, and it's a really great way to visualize which interventions have been deemed by the most effective at reducing speed and improving road safety. So it emphasizes that the most effective measures target the road system itself rather than relying solely on individual behavior. Many of us know this through our discussions on safe systems and Vision Zero. At the base of the period, we see the most effective measures, and that's our system design. Designing roads, streets, and networks to naturally encourage safe speeds. Lower speed limits on streets with pedestrians, cyclists, road narrowing, roundabout, speed humps, and other traffic and pedestrian calming measures. Also, separation of vehicles from vulnerable road users we know is extremely effective. So these changes consistently reduce speed and crash severity when aligning and also align very well with our Vision Zero principles. We know they work. The middle of the pyramid, we see technology and enforcement. So here we're looking at tools that reinforce safe speed. Examples include intelligent speed assistance that we're going to hear a little bit about today, automated speed enforcement that we're also going to hear about, red light cameras, and targeted police enforcement. So these measures support safe behavior, and we know they can also help reduce speed-related crashes, but they are less effective without supportive road design. So again, this is where we have those multifaceted interventions supporting one another. And at the top of the pyramid, we have education and awareness. So this is the intervention that is the least effective alone. Informing and encouraging drivers to choose safe speeds is valuable, but it needs to be integrated into some of these other interventions. Things like road safety campaigns, public service announcements, community engagement, and media awareness. So limited effectiveness here if used alone, because we know human behavior is prone to error. And as I said, best used in combination with lower level interventions. So we're going to really be focusing on the bottom and the middle section of the pyramid in today's presentation. So that is my short and sweet overview. And from here, I'm going to pass it on to Dr. Linda Rothman.
Thanks, Val, for that. I really appreciate being here today. I wanted to just start off with a little bit of an introduction of who I am. I'm an injury prevention epidemiologist with a special interest in road safety And I look at road safety in terms of a public health and equity lens. Epidemiology does not traditionally do road safety work. Usually it's things like infectious diseases, chronic diseases. But what we really do look at are the determinants, the who, what, why, and where things happen. So it is really conducive to road safety research. The other thing is, in terms of epidemiology, is we count things, and we count a lot of things.
Sorry, Linda.
Yeah,
We're just getting some requests that you speak a little louder. The audio is just a little quiet. Thank you.
is this better?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, the epidemiologists count things, and what I have been doing is counting a lot of injuries, a lot of deaths on our roadways, and that's what has turned me into becoming a road safety epidemiologist. I'm an associate professor at the Toronto Metropolitan University. I do research out of that university with Hospital for Sick Kids and University of Toronto. And I do have a background in occupational therapy, so I do have a clinical background. What I've really been finding is that multidisciplinary research is the key to change in action. I work really closely with different academics, people in governments, not-for-profits. I work with engineers, geographers, urban designers, people in public health. It's really important that everybody is involved in this type of research. I've also not only done a lot of observational research and secondary analysis of big databases, but I've done quite a bit of evaluation research into different things like cycling infrastructure, countdown timers, reduction in posted speed limits. And then what I'm going to talk to you today about is the automated speed enforcement study that we just recently did that just came out. So the study came out just in July, looking at our automated speed enforcement study that we did in school zones in Toronto. It was published in Injury Prevention recently, had a lot of media attention. So what did we do in the study? We looked at Toronto's automated speed enforcement program that was launched under Vision Zero, which targeted speed reduction in school areas and community safety zones. And the analysis we did in the paper was for the first 5 phases of the program with the 50 mobile camera units that represented 250 different sites. And that was from July 2020 to December 2022. Currently, the program has actually expanded to 150 cameras operating. We looked at pre-ESC data using pneumatic road tubes of 2018 to installation dates, and we considered the warning periods and the ticketing periods, which were about 3 to 6 months long. We measured the percentage of vehicles exceeding the speed limits, and we looked at it by 30, 40, and 50 kilometer per hour zones. We also looked at 85th percentile speeds, which is commonly used to measure in traffic engineering to set speed limits. And for those of you who aren't engineers, it's the speed at or below which 85% of vehicles travel in free-flowing traffic. So what did we find? This is a bit of a busy map, a busy graph, but we had on top of it all to confuse matters was COVID in the middle of it. So we had to make sure that we accounted for things like school closures and school reopenings, which you can see at the top of the graph. The bottom hatched lines are traffic volumes over the period of time. We have the warning periods. We have the ticketing periods. And we also have the different speeds. So these are the the amount of kilometers per hour over the speed limit. And this one was an example of the 40 kilometer per hour speed zones. You can see with the started ticketing, quite a drastic reduction in the percentage of cars going over the speed limit. And this yellow, orange, and red represent the highest amount of speeding. So over 15 kilometers, there was an 83% drop, and over 87% drop for the over 20 kilometers per hour. Overall, there was a 45% drop in the percentage of drivers going over the speed limit during the automated speed enforcement period. So that was great. In terms of 85th percentile speeds, these are the speed limits here. 30 posted speed limits, 30 kilometers, 40 kilometers, and 50 kilometers. Here they are here in the dark line. And then you can see the hatched lines are the 85th percentile speeds. So before we put the ASCs in, this is where it is, and this is how far it went down. And you can see that consistently across all the different speed limit, posted speed limits. A little bit less for the 50th. Okay, overall, we were surprised to see that we got a 10.7 kilometer per hour drop overall with the introduction of automated speed enforcement. So basically, what we could summarize from all this is the percentage of drivers speeding over the speed limit and 85th percentile speeds dropped during automated speed enforcement near schools. But what we also did find is they returned to pre-ASC levels after the removal. So that's something we really need to consider. Despite the overall success of ASC in lowering vehicle speed, we still have extreme speeding prevalent in many locations. I haven't pulled this picture up in years, but it was a picture I used frequently a while ago. This was, we were doing some observations of speeding and dangerous driving behaviors around schools in 2015. And somebody was going fast enough to actually do this while we were doing our observational counts just on a street by a school. I'm hoping things have improved somewhat since then, but we did still see a lot of extreme speeding near schools, even with the automated speed enforcement. I do want to emphasize that ASC is a really effective way to manage speeding, but it has to be used to complement other things. We can't just put automated speed enforcement in, but we should be considering other things such as traffic calming, road configurations, all those types of things that are needed as a speed reduction program as part of Vision Zero. And the best part about all this is I think this is one of the best examples that we've had so far of a very successful collaboration between municipalities and academic researchers. We worked really well together. We set goals together. We set our outcomes together, and we ended up with some great results. So our next steps for this program is we want to look at more cities. We also found that like some locations actually reduce speeds a lot better than other locations. We want to look more at why this is happening. Is it the way the road is built? Is it the area it's in? Is there something about where the automated speed enforcement is placed that is making it work differently in different locations? And even just as important is to consider other local conditions across cities in Canada. And we do have a grant that we are going to be looking at automated speed enforcement in 10 cities across Canada. The other thing we haven't done yet, and we're trying to get that funded right now and have been unsuccessful to date, but we're hoping the next time around from Canadian Institutes of Health Research, is we really want to look, this was about reducing speed. We really want to look at the reduction in collisions. We can infer that if you reduce speeds, there's a reduction in collisions, but we do want to quantify that and actually show what does happen in terms of collision and collision severity with the automated speed enforcement. So that's the next steps in our program. And that's about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Linda. And because you were so prompt and amazing in being quick, I'm actually going to just address two quick questions that came up that are very specific in our Q&A before we move to our next speaker. So you finished up about 3 minutes early. What was the tolerance before ticketing is the first question. And then someone else is saying, yes, very interested in ticketing threshold. Can you speak to that?
I'm not exactly sure what tolerance to ticketing means. I'm sorry.
No problem. So this will give the folks, Tobin and the other person who asked those questions, just elaborate on your questions so we can get those answered by Linda in the next phase. Thank you, Linda. Paul, Mackey, over to you. Please go ahead and turn your audio and visual on and get started.
Okay. I'm a street designer that deals with traffic safety, but I also take into consideration other concerns such as universal design, heat islands, stormwater management. In 1995, I was on the steering committee of the Transportation Association of Canada urban supplement to the Geometric Design Guide, which first introduced traffic calming ideas in an official Canadian publication. Now, there are 4 main classes of personality types with respect to rules. I will focus here for the moment on 2 of them. A minority, somewhere around 10% of the population, systematically disregards rules and regulations. It is for them that police surveillance and automated speed enforcement find their greatest usefulness. The other class, somewhere in the order of 60% of the population, consists of people who want to drive safely and not endanger anyone, and who will use posted speed limits as a guide to which they will adhere to insofar as it seems reasonable to them in order to maintain safety. Now, geometric design is a primary safety initiative for this second class of drivers. Driving is mostly a subconscious behavior. With the improvement in acoustic insulation and suspension systems, sight has become the dominant sense involved in driver behavior. Drivers read the road. The geometric design of the roads and the characteristics of the roadside send cues to drivers as to the speed they think is proper. This is an instinctive messaging phenomenon. In contrast, signs are a rational message. In the brain, psychologists tell us that an instinctive message is treated much more quickly than a rational message, so that signs have a minimal effect on driving speed. And we should remember that speed perception is related to peripheral vision. Now, road design in North America is still largely based on the concept of design speed, a safe and comfortable speed when free flow conditions prevail. In designing roads, designers are taught to use a speed above the expected or existing posted speed. It used to be at least 10 miles an hour in the imperial system. When Canada adopted the metric system, it became at least 10 kilometers an hour above the speed limit. Why is this? Well, road design engineers generally belong to a third class of behavior, those that closely follow rules. So they expect drivers to follow the speed limit sign and claim that the higher design speed creates a margin of safety. But this is a false mental construct. Drivers will drive at the safe and comfortable speeds. Drivers may thus be led to disobey speed limit signs. Now, I have 2 slides of this road here. Drivers do not drive 50 kilometers an hour on this section of road, and it's more in the neighborhood of 70 kilometers an hour. And this is an old picture, but the situation hasn't really changed all that much in the intervening years. On this picture, there's no sidewalks either on the left or on the right. Well, now there's a sidewalk on the left-hand side, and they've added some speed limit signs. But still, this is a problematic situation. Okay. Now, the 2017 edition of the Geometric Design Guide for Canadian Roads includes a recommendation to use a new concept called target speed, where the geometry would ensure that and would induce drivers to follow the operating speed that is desired. Unfortunately, no method is given to achieve this type of design. There was a research project that was started in the US in 2020 to discover the method, but the project is yet to produce results. A date of November this year has been set for completion of this project, so at least we can hope. Now, a wide, straight road will lead drivers to drive more quickly. Our sensation of speed is based on peripheral vision. As objects are further away because of the width of the street, they pass by at a slower rate in our peripheral vision, and we do not get the same feeling as when objects are close. Road designers typically do not investigate the likely speed of drivers on the street they design. In many cases, up to the recent past, when traffic increased, road designers went almost automatically from a 2-lane cross-section to a 4-lane cross-section. By increasing the width, speeds increase. And when an undivided 4-lane road has numerous driveways, conflicts can be very severe, and speed leads to crashes. So in the past 20 years or so, road design has more often examined the possibility of a 3-lane cross-section with a 2-way left turn lane in the middle. If an existing road with 4 lanes is converted to such a 3-lane configuration, and the space made available for other uses, principally bike lanes and bollards and flex posts, it's called a road diet. But a road diet is any change in the design that reduces the number of lanes. So we have an example here of a project I worked on, and you see the 2-way left turn lane, and there's an island to ensure that the center lane doesn't be used as a passing lane. Now, having only 1 lane of through traffic in each direction allows a better control of speeds, especially for speedier drivers. Traffic calming is a reactive strategy to treat streets that function poorly, especially in regards to pedestrian and cyclist safety, but also in terms of crashes. In the best of cases, an analysis of speeds reveals a situation where the operating speed of vehicles is too high for the milieu. A further analysis that often reveals what geometric factors are contributing to speed and uncovers design solutions to address these factors. So and there's a number of different ways: horizontal deflection, vertical deflection, or traffic diversion techniques. And I also would like to point out the usefulness of roundabouts. The geometric design of streets is finally changing, albeit slowly, to improve traffic safety, while I consider that vehicle design is heading in the opposite direction by having blunter and higher front ends. So I'll be happy to answer any questions that come up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Very interesting. So now let's move over to Paul, you were finished, right?
Yeah.
Okay, super. And as you can tell, like there's a presentation for each of these presenters on their own. So we are squishing a lot of information into a short period of time, but happy to field questions for any of these presenters later in a discussion. So over to Peter for your presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Val. So good afternoon. I'm Peter Burns from Transport Canada. And I'm going to be talking about intelligent speed assistance, or ISA, and its potential to reduce speed-related road trauma here in Canada. I'm a human factor psychologist. I've been at Transport Canada for 20 years now. Are you seeing my slides all right?
Yes, yeah, we
Okay,
can see them. Thank you.
And prior to Transport Canada, I worked at Volvo in Sweden. So my team at Transport Canada conducts applied vehicle safety research to support regulations and standards development. Current research topics include driver distraction from touchscreen displays in vehicles, headlight glare, and the safety of driver assistance and automated driving systems. Our research tools include driving simulator, our test track with instrumented test vehicles, and a selection of different dummy targets. And we do research in-house as well as collaborate with other organizations in Canada and internationally. In the last 30 years, vehicles have changed significantly. Their power has increased along with their height and their weight. Looking at the two most popular vehicles in Canada now, the Ford F-150 and the Toyota RAV4, their horsepowers have more than doubled in the last 30 years. We're seeing a general decline in 0 to 60 acceleration times since the 1980s. Some data from the EPA in the US. We're also seeing a whole host of new opportunities for driver distraction with large touch screen infotainment systems and smartphones in the vehicles. And this is yet another risk with distraction and speed not being a great combination for road safety. Fortunately, vehicle safety has improved significantly. There's better suspension and handling. We're seeing really effective safety systems like electronic stability control, automatic emergency braking, and some amazing occupant protection systems like side curtain airbags and seatbelt pretensioners that have made cars safer than ever for the occupants. So what is ISA? It's a vehicle system that helps drivers stay within the posted speed limit. It relies on positioning data from GPS and speed limits on digital maps, as well as cameras that can recognize the speed signs. And it uses that information to determine the current speed limit, and it displays the information to the driver and warns them when they exceed the speed limit or helps them maintain the appropriate speed. Now, there's three general types of ISA systems. First, we have the passive systems that they just alert the driver visually or audibly when they exceed the speed limit. And these systems are required now on new vehicles in Europe. Next, we have the active ISA systems that apply pedal resistance against acceleration to avoid speeding. You can override these systems by pressing the pedal harder. Lastly, we have a combination system between ISA and adaptive cruise control, and it's called Speed Aware ACC. With this system, it adjusts the set speed based on the posted speed limit. Now, here's a flashback. We were testing an early Swedish active ISA system here in Ottawa nearly 20 years ago. And we were hoping to showcase the safety potential of ISA technology. We agreed to demonstrate it to CTV News. And surprisingly, the reporter did not exactly embrace the ISA concept.
Meet the guy who could possibly become the most disliked man in Canada, the man who might make it impossible for you to speed.
You get a bit of resistance on the gas pedal and you can't push any further.
It's a device which uses GPS technology to sense the posted speed limit, and if you go over, it will either give you a warning, or it'll actually stop you from pressing the accelerator.
Well, the pedal is fighting me right now.
The systems are already being used in Europe, but this Ottawa pilot project is the first of its kind in North America. Transport Canada is testing the devices to see if they should become mandatory.
There could be some sort of requirement.
So that was a long time ago, and surprisingly, the reporter didn't exactly embrace the ISA concept. It was Kim Brunhuber, who's actually an anchor at CNN now. And I think my ranking as the most disliked man in Canada has hopefully dropped a little since then. And currently, we have a whole host of different technologies available to assist drivers with their speed. At the most basic level, you have a maximum speed alert. So the drivers can put a custom setting to be warned if they exceed, for example, 110 kilometers per hour. Then we have speed limiters are required on trucks in 3 provinces set at 105 kilometers per hour. But these systems aren't, they're not intelligent. So if you're driving on an 80 kilometer per hour road, the system would still allow you to go 105. We're seeing It's increasingly common to have a speed limit display next to the speedometer in the vehicle. Also, we have some apps that offer speed limit information and warnings. There's a few new vehicles that have the passive ISA systems coming on the market. And we have some aftermarket ISA systems that can be used for high-risk speeders, like parents who want to put one in for their teen drivers, or chronic speeders, for example. And lastly, we have the speed-aware cruise control, which I described. The evidence for ISA is promising. So in the UK, they estimated that it could prevent a third of urban crashes. US drivers, for the most part, recognize the safety potential of ISA. There was a pilot study done in New York City of their fleet vehicles. So hundreds of fleet vehicles had an active ISA system installed, and they found that it was quite effective in reducing speeding. I expect that with the rise of photo radar and other speed control interventions, that ISA systems could become more appealing to consumers seeking to avoid speeding tickets. There are some challenges for the technology. Identifying the correct speed limit is not simple. Signs are not as standardized in Canada as they are across Europe. There can be a clutter of signs. There can be road signs with numbers that aren't speed limits, that could be misread. Signs could be blocked by trees. There's speed limits that vary by vehicle type, whether it's a car or truck. There's time of day speed limits for school zones. So it is a challenge. Another one is matching speed limits to the correct location can be tricky. There are reports of systems confusing the speed limits on adjacent roads. So imagine if you're on this road and the system's telling you can go 110. So we do have questions about the technology, and we're hoping to evaluate the effectiveness, looking at the accuracy of the positioning, transitions between speed zones, error rates for the systems. Also, whether or not they can handle these conditional speed limits for different vehicle types, or time of day speed limits. Another important issue is the problem of driving too fast for conditions. Your ISA system may warn you for driving over 80 kilometers per hour, but on an icy road, in a snowstorm with poor visibility, you should be driving less than the posted speed limit. There's a whole host of human factors concerns with this technology. It's important to design really effective warnings that users will accept and that will help them comply with the speed limit, and so they trust the systems. You don't want them to over rely on it. You still need them to be vigilant of the speed signs. And there is a concern that they might get annoyed by excessive beeping and flashing. Lastly, it's really important to safely integrate ISA with other driver assistance and automated driving systems. Automated driving systems need to know the correct speed limit, and they need to follow those speed limits. So that's really important technology. Here's some video of some testing we did on the track at Transport Canada's Motor Vehicle Test Centre. We wanted to test speed-aware cruise control systems to see if they'd recognize the 60 kilometers per hour work zone sign. And if you go back here, you can see the car set speed is at 90, and then it passes the speed sign, recognizes it, and it automatically decelerates down to 60. Now, the exact same test, same vehicle, and it fails to recognize and respond to the speed limit sign. So they're not perfect. And here's a different vehicle, and we're testing the 160 max min signs that you see in Quebec. And the vehicle is traveling at 40, and we're testing to see which speed it would choose. In this case, You can see it's going at 40, it sees a sign, and it accelerates up to 100. So in this case, it worked. Quick overview of some of the testing results we did on one vehicle. For some signs, the system was quite effective. For the construction signs, there were issues. So here it was detecting 13 of 16 60 km/h signs. But if you mount that sign a half meter slower, for some reason, it would only detect half of them. So we're still trying to figure that out. In summary, vehicles today are safer, but they also make it easier than ever to speed. ISA offers a promising solution, and it's becoming more common. Research is needed in Canada to better understand ISA's safety potential, as well as the limitations, and to inform future policy and regulatory decisions. And ISA can be a powerful part of our speed management toolkit, coupled with other countermeasures like effective enforcement and proper road design. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Yeah, and it would not be fun to be the most hated man in Canada, but I can understand the backlash, because people get, as we know, they get really angry, and often aggressive when we do anything to slow them down. And you know, we've talked to crossing guards who have been threatened, have been verbally abused for doing their job and getting people to slow down and stop. We know that speed cameras are often vandalized over and over and over again. And people seem to really get annoyed with traffic calming, speed bumps because of the noise. So I am going to come to that question in terms of, and I guess that's where the engagement and education piece comes in. And I'll probably round up with that question about how we try to change the culture with people about speed, so that people start to embrace it more than lashing against it. But right now, if I can ask everyone, all the presenters, to turn on their cameras and audio. I'm going to start off with a few of my own questions. And then Linda, thank you for answering the questions in the chat. You've gotten a lot answered there. And we will go to a few of the Q&A questions as well. So Linda, let's start with you. Speaking just to what I was saying just a minute ago. So we know there is a growing backlash with many people with speed enforcement cameras. We are starting to see provinces and in some case cities look to reduce the number of cameras they have on speed cameras they have on the roads. We've seen it in a number of places and provinces. And we've actually heard policymakers say they simply don't work, that there's no evidence that they work. So with that, I know it's a broad question, but tell us a little bit about what you feel are some of the common misconceptions about automated speed enforcement, and how can we use data and public health data to shift some of these conversations, not just with the public, but with policymakers who are making decisions to shut some of this down?
Thanks, Val. Well, you covered the two top, which were, it's just a cash grab and they don't improve safety. There's also another argument that I hear frequently, is that they're inaccurate or unreliable. The first two, the cash grab piece, I do think, and the safety piece, I think ultimately cities and everybody that works with them needs to be as transparent as possible. Where's that money going to? And from what I understand, the money from the automated speed enforcement cameras goes to cover costs of the programs and other Vision Zero initiatives and to deal with the ticketing process. Nobody's making any money off of this. So I do think transparency, and people have been asking about what the speed threshold is. That's also an important one, just to make sure that the public and everybody involved knows what's happening and why it's happening. That's also in terms of safety. We've got good data that shows that they are reducing speed. We don't have a ton of data about collisions. So I do think that, again, making data available to whoever wants it, so open access. I think data sharing is super important. We need meaningful community engagement. So you alluded to this just before, Val. Like, we know now how important meaningful community engagement was in the whole cycling infrastructure thing that just happened. You need to make sure that you're communicating with the communities that you're doing the installations in, and make sure they have feedback and make sure they have information. Inherent in that is regular reporting. We can't just release an ASE report once every 3 years. I think we need to be regularly updating, and the City of Toronto does a pretty good job at that with some of their dashboards on how effective these things are, so people know that they're actually working. And I do think public health does have a huge part to play in this, because we can also integrate some hospital data in there. We can integrate all sorts of other types of data that isn't usually socioeconomic status data, that does not necessarily become part, or is usual part of data collection for like a transportation department in a city. So working with public health, I think, is super important. And again, as public health people, other than parachute, of course, we're not used to talking loudly. I do think we've got the data, and we do have the analytic skills, and we do have the relationships with the engineers, the urban planners, the designers, to get out there and really, really make sure the messages get out there that these are safe, they are reliable, and it's not just a cash grab.
Thanks, Linda. And yeah, I completely agree on the transparency piece. I think cities need to do a better job at communicating to the constituents as to where the money is going. I think that's really important. And also, I think it's really important to continue to use that education and awareness piece in communicating with folks when they do get tickets. How can we leverage good messaging and good communication about how many people are actually dying on our roads at the same time we're giving out these tickets? That's a missed opportunity to me, and I think cities need to be thinking about educating and trying to shift the culture as they're ticketing people. So maybe people just take a breath when they get that ticket in the mail, and they think, okay, well, I could have put someone's life at risk. So thank you. And Paul, it looks like you want to ask Linda something. So we have tons of questions. If you want to comment or go ahead.
Well, yeah, I want to comment because the road section that I showed in my slides, there is now an automated speed enforcement camera at the beginning of that section, which I find very inappropriate. And I think before installing automated speed enforcement, there should be a required analysis of the road design to see if there's a disconnect between the speed limit and the design. So a 3-lane with a median, people are not going to drive 50 kilometers an hour on it. So that's an inappropriate location. And there's another case also in Quebec City where there was an accident, and the kind of knee-jerk reaction was to put in automated speed enforcement where it's a freeway, but it's supposed to posted at 70 kilometers an hour. So it's not the appropriate response. So generally speaking, automated speed enforcement is a tool that should be used, but it has to be used with care.
Yeah. Yeah, and thank you. And I think that's what we spoke about in that pyramid we showed, is that any and all of these interventions, including road design and traffic calming, need to be supported and supplemented with reinforcement of education, policy, and enforcement as well. And we know that, and that will actually, it's a great segue for my next question for you, Paul, which is, we know there's backlash with speed enforcement, automated speed enforcement. However, we also know there's backlash when neighborhoods or jurisdictions choose certain areas to include interventions for traffic calming and different pedestrian facilities and so forth. And I'll give an example. I live in a rural community, but I live right off a very busy county road where there's been 2 fatalities. The community has looked at doing an audit, and some initial ideas that came out of it were some speed bumps. However, half of the community decided, and we won't get into the details of that intervention. My point is that there was pushback against the noise of speed bumps. There's also pushback against road redesign, bike lanes, separated bike lanes, and so forth. So in terms of traffic calming and pedestrian facilities, how would you suggest we go about addressing the backlash that we see from communities?
Well, I have maybe 3 points to bring up. One is the difficulty of meshing professional expertise and citizen knowledge, and I'm always been in favor of having public meetings and other outreach activities to involve the people. You mentioned in your case, like there was some fatalities on a road, so that's a reason to act, and that can be brought up and get a feedback from the population. But there are 2 other important aspects. One is professional inertia, and that's it's easier often to do it the way we've always done it since we learned it in university. For example, if you've spent a couple of courses learning how to design traffic signals, you may not be all that keen on putting in a roundabout instead, because you have less knowledge about roundabouts. What can be worse is if you kind of try your hand at doing something. When you talk about the problem of noise with speed bumps, now I'm not sure if you're talking about speed humps or speed bumps, but the kind of the rounded 4 meter long, I call them speed humps, but they have to be spaced within a certain distance of one another to avoid people speeding up and then braking. So you have to know the field. Just don't try your hand. Also, in terms of often engineers, they're very interested in normative safety. Does it follow standards? But you say, but that's even if it meets standards, is it the best safety solution? So there was some work that was done years ago by Ezra Howard at the University of Toronto, distinguishing normative safety and substantive safety. And maybe some of your listeners would have remembered the 407 blow up when the freeway was designed to minimum standards, and the eve of its opening, the Ontario Provincial Police declared it unsafe. That created quite a stir in the professional community. But there's also institutional inertia, and because if you rely on standards, you have to know that the standards process is extremely long. For example, the Transportation Association of Canada put out a standards in 1999, and probably around 10 years later they said, well, maybe we should try and redo it. But they canvass funds from partners, and they finally got the money in 2013, and then the edition came out in 2017. So that's like 18 years difference between standards. Well, situations evolve. There's a lot of innovative ideas that have difficulty getting introduced into standards. It's like you need a couple of engineers that are willing to a little bit more risk to try something new, and that's not in the standards, if you want the standards to evolve. And so it's kind of like chicken and egg type problem. So there are a lot of issues.
Yeah, no, thank you. And those are all very good points in terms of just thinking about how we do things and the order we do things in as well. Peter, I've been reading a lot, and I'm quite interested in the ISA stuff we're seeing happening in the US and in Europe, and I know they're very different. I know in states like Virginia, and I know there's some other states looking to bring it on as well. They're looking at mandating through the court system ISA for chronic speeders. And then I know that there's a lot happening in Europe around manufactured vehicles and implementing and mandating ISA as well. So can you tell us a little bit about both of those scenarios, how they might differ, and any learnings from Canada? And I saw Rahim asked a question in the chat that's quite that connects to this as well, in terms of, you know, how do we make ISA a feasible potential tool in Canada? So a few pieces in there for you to answer.
Yeah, I see Rahim asked about making ISA more feasible from the perspective of road agencies and designers. And one thing is to have reliable digital maps of speed limits, and making sure that jurisdictions keep up-to-date speed limit information and share that with mapping providers. And I'm not sure how the mechanism by which that is done, but there are companies that provide these digital maps to the automakers to support their various technologies. Also and keeping those as current as possible, and update, yeah, so updating when there's ever change or roadworks and so forth. For chronic speeders, that solution is really an aftermarket technology. So it's a device that's installed in the vehicle, an active ISA system that actually resists the speeding for chronic speeders. And I mean, the appeal of that is it still allows them to drive, so they don't lose their mobility. The worry is it might be at risk of tampering or disabling. These systems are connected to the vehicle, but they don't have as much information as the integrated ISA systems that come as original equipment. The other thing, this is because this is aftermarket technology, it's not a federal jurisdiction. I'm not sure whether any of the provinces and territories in Canada have looked at this solution or have any experience testing it. In Europe, the informative or passive ISA systems are required now. And we're watching that very closely. I mean, Europe is different than Canada. I mean, they have a different safety culture. They have different roads. They have different vehicles, different signage. So we're watching it closely, hoping to learn from that experience. It's still pretty early. I haven't seen evidence on the effectiveness yet. I have heard reports of complaints from motorists about getting frequent warnings from these systems, and so they switch them off. And for example, you imagine a situation where you're driving at the speed limit, which is say 80, and you go down to 79, and you go up to 81, you're constantly oscillating around that. And the worry is that you get warned every time you go over that threshold. So you could get incessant warnings, and that obviously is not ideal. So these things need to be designed effectively. So yeah, we're very interested in how that works out and trying to determine whether or not it would be an effective solution for here in Canada.
Thank you. And there's a great article, I think, in one of the last or previous CARSP editorial newsletter that Peter was part of around ISA. If anyone's interested, maybe Julie, you can drop that into the chat. Okay, so we're down to 5 minutes. And we've been getting some of the questions answered, but I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Anne, who I've asked just to keep an eye on the chat and Q&A. And Anne, can you go ahead and pull out 1 or 2 questions from the chat that we can get answered?
Yes, for sure. So this question is for Paul Mackey. How do road design changes interact with other measures like ASC in urban environments? Are they complementary or redundant in some cases?
Well, I would say that street design should be looked at first to see if there's a mismatch, as I said earlier, between the speed limit and the design of the road. And there's tons of traffic calming measures that can be implemented, and that would be my first measure to implement. As I mentioned earlier in my presentation, I think automated speed enforcement is to catch like regular speeders and people who will follow the rules only if there's some risk of getting a ticket. And it shouldn't, in my mind, it shouldn't be the primary way of doing it. As also, like speed humps, to my mind, are not the principal means we should use. We should look at other ways of calming traffic in terms of street design.
Thank
Leave
you.
it at that.
Perfect, thank you. There's another question for Paul Burns. So this question is around public acceptance for active ISA and geofencing speed limits when it comes to micromobility devices. So the question is, are there any best practices from that integration that other cities are doing and public awareness that could be brought over when considering ISA for vehicles, especially in high-risk identified areas?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not aware of any intelligent speed limiting systems for micromobility devices. I do think it's really important to have a speed cap on those e-scooters, for example, which could, I think some of them could go up to 100 kilometers per hour, which is very worrying. So I think we're still trying to get our heads around that, as are municipalities and provinces and territories. It's a real challenge.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, and we've heard those kind of questions as well around the micromobility space that we still don't know all the answers to. So there's two things, Linda, I see you. I'm gonna come back to you in just a moment. But just for people that need to hop off, any questions that didn't get answered, we will go through all the Q&A and we will get the answers from our presenters and circle back to you. Over to Linda. I know you have a comment, and then we'll wrap up.
Sorry, I just wanted to respond to Paul's
Yeah.
a little bit more detail. First of all, the problem is well, road design takes a long time. Automated speed enforcement is a quick fix. That's why things tend to get jumped right into that way. It's just the reality of the situation. To get things passed for road design takes a long time. The other thing that I really I agree with is that we need to find out where automated speed enforcement works the best. And I do think we need some evidence generated around that, not just say, oh, this person said that if there's a curve in the road at 0.5 kilometers from this, it'll work. But we actually need to do some decent research to find out what type of road configurations it works well on, and where it doesn't, what kind of areas it works well on in terms of land mix, all those kind of things as well. So we need some evidence bases to rely on.
I just like to put in a plug for quick build solutions. So sometimes infrastructure takes a long time to implement, but you can do a quick build solution in very short time that will be very effective.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. And yeah, to understand what Linda's saying in terms of that quick fix that may be more realistic, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be advocating and working with cities to address things in a way where we can actually make real changes in terms of road design. So agree on both sides. I want to wrap up with 2 points. I love the safe speed discussion or safe speed camera discussion happening in the chat. I've spoken to a number of colleagues in Europe, and they're using instead of speed cameras, they're using safe speed cameras. And again, it's just about changing the culture of how we use our language and how we, we try not to we don't use the word accident. It's the same with speed cameras. Let's call them what they are, which is we're trying to keep people safe. So maybe that's something we can get behind in with our partners in the road safety space as we continue to use safe speed cameras. And again, before we wrap up, I would like to say thank you very much to our ongoing and very committed sponsor, Desjardins Insurance. They allow us to run these webinars and take the time to organize these webinars and bring out so many great presenters and knowledge into this space. So thank you. And I'd also like to thank all of our presenters and everybody who joined today. I know we could keep going and keep talking for much longer, but as I said, you can email me directly, vsmith@parachute.ca, if you want us to get any questions answered, if you want to learn more about anything, or just connect to any of our presenters. That would be great. And thanks again, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.